This is a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast.
Hello there and welcome to the Bite-Size Business Breakfast. Very best bits of today's show from Tuesday, January the 25th, live from Expo 2020 Dubai, the night that the Black Eyed Peas are playing down here at Expo.
Just the highlights. This is the Bite-Size Business Breakfast.
Very pleased now to be speaking to a new voice on the Business Breakfast. Justin Dargin, who is Senior Energy and Geopolitical Expert at the University of Oxford. Justin, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with one of our headlines. We've seen energy demand climbing nearly 10% here in Dubai for 2021 over the year before. Now, those are, of course, two COVID years. What can we take from this number, Justin?
Well, I think the most important takeaway from this is that the majority of this demand increase is actually going to be met by renewable energy. And I think that that's quite significant because prior to this demand increase, even prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, demand increases in the UAE would typically have been met by natural gas. So the fact that in Dubai this demand increase is going to be met principally by renewable energy, I think is quite a significant development. And it also segues in quite nicely with Dubai's goal of being able to significantly increase its renewable energy production by 2030. So, of course, you have the UAE wants to increase its renewable energy production, solar comprising a big part of that by about 25%, and then nuclear by about 7% from clean coal, and then, of course, the rest of that would be by natural gas. So I think that this is quite a good step. And also the increase shows that the UAE economy has rebounded from over the past 2 years. So this is also, we could say, a positive picture.
When we talk about renewables taking up that bigger share of the energy mix and providing that extra demand, what does that actually mean for the cost and the efficiency of creating our power here and how much we might eventually pay for it?
Oh, sure. Well, there have been several factors, I would say, that have contributed to the type of reconfiguration of the UAE energy sector. And if we look at production issues and also demand issues. So on one hand, the multi-billion-dollar investments over the past few years that the UAE has funneled into renewable energy production has begun to bear fruit. And as a result, the UAE has been able to have some of the lowest cost solar power generation costs across the region. So this is, I think, quite phenomenal. And the UAE as well has undertaken a bit of a comprehensive power tariff reconfiguration. So, of course, over the past several years, the tariff has been liberalized, I guess you could say, to a certain degree. So there has been an increase. But with the billions of dollars that have been invested in renewable energy, we are not necessarily going to see a type of price spike due to the transition from natural gas to renewable energy. And as a matter of fact, I would say for the midterm, we could actually see prices would be a bit more stable. Because if you look at some of the newer fields that would be coming online in the UAE, the production costs are actually a bit higher. So that would actually translate into higher prices for the end consumer at the end of the day.
So you're talking about the price of renewables there. What about the price of traditional energy? We've got oil prices continuing to climb, oil, but also, of course, concerns potentially about gas, given conflicts, potential conflicts with Russia and Ukraine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there are two, I think, broad pictures that we can look at in regards to the increase in the global oil price. On one hand, if you look at more of the short-term picture, you have something which we term the triple deficit. Now, that is due to low oil inventories, which are across the OECD countries, and actually the oil inventories are expected to dip to their lowest levels since about 2000 by the summer. And then also you have the fact that there is a low spare capacity for the OPEC plus countries, and it's at historically low levels at the moment. So spare capacity is only about 1.2 million barrels per day. And actually, interestingly enough, it's only Saudi Arabia and the UAE that has any meaningful spare production capacity at the moment. And then you also have this issue of low investment. So as oil production, of course, declined at the onset of the pandemic. Many of the oil companies did not, as soon as demand rebounded, they did not return with significant amounts of investment to increase production. I mean, so this is what you have circulating, I guess you could say, at this particular moment for the short term. But then if you look at the longer term picture, you have the global drive for decarbonization. So, of course, as you know, we have the Glasgow Agreement, of course, and then also the Paris Agreement before then. So in expectation that there is going to be a reduced global oil demand going forward, many companies are loath to put any type of significant investment in order to increase oil production with the view that there's an increasingly hostile take of oil in the global economy.
Very quickly, less than a minute left with you. What about demand, though? The IEA saying that oil demand could exceed pre-COVID levels in 2022. But what we're seeing in China, what we're seeing in the lack of a global aviation recovery would all seem to defy that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest question mark here is whether China will continue to adhere to its zero COVID policy. So China is the largest oil consuming country in the world. So if we still see lockdowns occurring in China over its major population centers, then, of course, this would exert downward pressure on global oil demand. So I would say that's the biggest question mark, to see how China will react with the emergence of new variants, and even how it will react to Omicron.
Justin Dargin is a senior energy and geopolitical expert at the University of Oxford, speaking to us for the first time on the Business Breakfast this morning.
You've been listening to a Dubai Eye 103.8 podcast. To enjoy lots more from Dubai Eye in the United Arab Emirates, just go to DubaiEye1038.com or find them wherever you normally get your podcasts.